This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Chumrukovsky, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to the I Love Success podcast. It's an honor, it's a privilege to have you here with me today. If you're on the journey of life and you want to grow, you come to the right podcast. If you're new to the show, my big fat mission is to help at least 10 million people in 10 years to achieve their dreams. If you've been with us for a while, I appreciate you. We're more than 300 episodes in, and I can tell you this podcast has changed my life. Why has it changed my life? Because I've had the privilege to talk to people that are thinking about the big questions in life and have been open to sharing it with the world. And today I'm very much excited because this is a guest that I wish I knew sooner, but I'm glad I know now. His name is Topaz Adizes, and he is the founder of the Skin Deep, which is the Emmy awarded show, and also the author of his book 12 Questions for Love. But much more than that, he's a human being with interest in the humanity and the human experience. He's studied philosophy, and he has, I want to get deep into this, but some of the things that happened to him at a young age have shaped him into the human being he is today. And I find that fascinating, that things that happen to us so early, especially being a new father now, can affect our whole life. So before we start this show, I just want to share something that Topaz wrote on his website that I think will just set the stage and set the tone for today's conversation. And it is the following. I believe that there's always something to learn, that I stand on the shoulders of those before me, that I'm here to contribute to the consciousness of us, that we should stop looking for answers and create better questions, that the best experiences and products arise out of diversity and collaboration, that the greatest technology is life itself, and it leaves its mark in the narratives of our lives, that what exists between us are powerful ingredients for transformation and development if we mind it properly, that it is an incredible time to be alive and participate in the future of humanity. With that said, welcome Topaz Adizes to the I Love Success podcast.
Hey, Peter. Thanks for having me. Good to meet you. Good to have you on. I have to be on your show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to honoring your journey, and what I have had the privilege of see, and you can uh, you even said that in a podcast, I think it was Ryan Holiday. I woke up very early this morning to listen about how like if you look at the eyes of any species, it's basically all black and the same. And I think we're somewhat wired the same, even though our collaboration as human beings are different. So can you just share, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, the divorce of your parents when you were 3 years old put you on a trajectory into being interested in the human experience and connection?
Yeah, I mean, I have in my life experience, I feel that life etches itself upon us. We're born with obviously certain proclivities and whatnot, but we are this marble piece, and then life happens to you. But it's not necessarily what happens to you; it's how you interpret it, and how you interpret it. The things that happen to you start to shape who you are. And so, for me as a child, I have a brother who's 15 months younger, and him and we were born to two loving parents, very intelligent, kind parents, um, but who were struggling, as many people do, in relationship. And their relationship became untenable when we were very young, and they struggled through it, and they decided to get divorced, which was the best thing for them, and frankly, best thing for their marriage was to divorce. It wasn't working. But as a 3, 4-year-old, to be a witness to these gods, because when you're that old, when you're that young, I should say, you look at these parents that you love so much, and they're really gods. They don't make any mistakes. They don't make any faults. They're just so incredible. When they were warring, that leaves its indelible mark. And that's what life threw at me. But how I interpreted that over time has changed. My interpretation of how it affected me has changed. And that's changed how I take, at first it was a hunger for intimacy. I saw these two people fighting and I was looking for where's connection? Where's the love? I was searching for it and I searched it for a lot of my life. And that search became a hunger. And that hunger then became a skill set that I honed. That hunger created a skill set. In my case, it was filmmaking. It was taking the camera and talking to people, searching for intimacy. And then the last 10 years, that skill set of filmmaking turned into a gift in the sense that we've done the And Project, which is Emmy Award winning for New Approaches to Documentary, which brings two people together, facing each other, asking questions that we give them, that we create for them. And then we share that with a wider audience. And, I've done that for the last 11 years. And I know for sure that's had a positive impact because now we have an audience that's been with us for 11 years all around the world. And they come and do our productions and know that we're informing the way that they hold the relationships that they're in. So that initial thing of the divorce, which was incredibly painful, became, it's a painful, but that became, a hunger, which became a gift, which then I was able to offer people.
Yeah, and it's beautiful that you have been able to take this experience and make it a gift. And what surprised me when I heard you say that is like, do a kid remember that their parents are fighting when they're 3 or 4 years old? But I guess
Yeah.
they do.
I mean, those are I have memories bef- before they got divorced. So it, I know that must be very early because I know they got divorced when I was about 4 years old, 3, 4, which is the age of my son now. And yeah, absolutely, you remember that. When the world is crumbling all around you, you wake up. That's for sure. You wake up out of your bubble of being a child, and you start looking for ways to survive. Right? There's an incredible book called The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce, which I read in my early 20s, which was incredibly informative for me. Um, about the unexpected legacy and divorce, which was in essence that if you are born into divorced families, you're assuming that the world will end, that things will end, because you've seen it end as a very young child, and that's what I took away from it. And that was very much my viewpoint on life. It was every type of relationship I got into was like, okay, how's this going to end? And when you ask yourself, how's this going to end, then you're going to find answers.
Yeah.
You're going to find answers for the things you ask, and that's not really a quality question to ask. You know.
Thank you for sharing that. And how we got connected is that I somehow stumbled upon a video of you and your father doing the and it touched me deeply. And then your father also said that he's from Macedonia. That's like, wow, I need to know more. But uh, how was that experience? Because doing conversations or creating something for others is one thing, but when you put yourself in the position of being the vulnerable person, how was that experience for you, and how was it for your father?
Mm.
uh,
Yeah, great question. One, I just felt that, I've actually done it 3 times with my dad over the last 11 years. The first time our crew forgot to hit record on the audio. So the audio was not good enough, so we didn't release it. But then we did it, 5 years later, six, and then we did again 5 years after that. Now there's 2 videos up. And for me, it was always clear all these people have courageously stepped into our space to share a bit of themselves and their relationship with us. They trusted us. They respect, we take a lot of privilege and responsibility um, when we hold the space for others to share their stories. And so I felt, I can't just talk the talk. You have to walk it too. And so my dad is a very courageous guy. He's very open, very confident. He's very who he is, and it's a wonderful quality of his. And yeah, him and I have, you know, a good relationship. He's a very special human being. He's a very special soul, and And so I just felt like, of course, I mean, I have to. If all these people have been courageous enough to be vulnerable in my space, I should step into my own space too,
Yeah.
right? I should step into this thing that I created, my team and I hold, and share a bit of myself too. That's only fair. And the payoff was invigorating. And I think my dad, it's funny because my dad, when I started launching the project, he's like, I don't get it. Like, what, two people talking? I don't get it. And then we made this interactive website. It's like, I don't get it. And then we have a live experience that we do, and he came to that. And he's like, I still don't get it. I don't get it. And so I brought him into a production that one time when we got to hit the record on the audio, and he goes, now I get it. I get this. He's like, son, this is like sex.
Yeah.
You could talk about sex all day long, but until you have sex, you don't really get it. This is like the like, excuse me, it's like that's like the and that you have to experience it. And he said this was wonderful. We had a conversation that we would never have had otherwise. We were presented with questions that we've never really asked in our relationship, and it was wonderful to take the time and hold the space and to have this conversation. And now he said, now our relationship is that much more nuanced and that much more our connection is that much more aware and illuminated because we've articulated our feelings and our perspectives. And that's how I usually feel after I do an ad. I've also done one with a good friend of mine, Justin, which was so much fun, and even I think we did it about a year and a half ago. So, 10 years in to holding the and then I did it one time with a friend, and I was even surprised about how much I enjoyed it and how much it deepened our relationship. You know, even though I'd seen so many and knew that that's what happens, I was surprised by how moved I was having the experience myself.
Yeah, I think like that. I haven't experienced the end yet, maybe at some point, but what I feel is even through doing this podcast, and I did my first 173 episodes, I was gung ho. It has to be in person, eye to eye. That's
Yeah.
how I did my first 173. And then COVID happened, and
Mm,
I had to pivot. And then I started doing this because I saw that, I can connect with people from all over the world now. But I
yeah.
do, when you're in the same space, it's something special,
Yeah.
especially if you have a connection.
That's true. But you can do the end too. You can play with you could use the book, 12 Questions for Love, or you can get a deck and pull out a random card and, and ask it. And there you
I
go. Got
will.
the book right there. But I mean, you can have that experience too. It doesn't have to be in a production per se. And, one of my biggest fans who loves the
I was
product
trying
is,
to say I wanted to do it in the production.
oh, I see. We're coming to LA. We're coming to LA. We'll invite you in. So wait,
Awesome.
did you just say you're a new dad? You just became a father?
Yeah. So,
When?
he's actually turning one year on Wednesday, October 30th.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so
It's a
that
big
kind of
deal.
led me to the next question. When you did this with your father, he's like, "You're gonna be an awesome dad. I'm so proud of you. You helped me so much, and your wife's gonna be an awesome mom." And what I understand, you have two kids now, right?
Yeah.
And how has that how has that experience been? eh, Not as a father, because I think there's so much about that, but how has that experience changed you as a creative?
Ooh. Wait. So are you asking me how has experience of becoming a father changed me as a creative?
Creative, how when you produce and see people and asking these questions, are you connecting on a different level? Are you
Mm.
seeing are you seeing things you didn't see before, or connecting in a way?
It's a great question. I mean, three things come up. One, okay. So one, as soon as I became a parent, I just didn't understand how the world worked. I mean, I became a father at 44.
Yeah.
So I lived quite a bit of life before I became a father. And then I became a father and said, holy moly, how does the world operate? How do people operate when their hearts are running around in other bodies? When your heart is there in your children. God forbid something happens to your children. How do you survive that?
Yeah.
And then you think of the war and the famine and the challenges, and I just was overwhelmed with grief. Just how do people manage. And you see things in the news now, and they're just absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And I just was like, just grief. And I just don't understand how the world operates when there must be so much pain. Forget about the people who get injured or killed or maimed, but their parents. How do they survive this? That's one. Two, and so obviously that opened up a lot of doors for me, and also it made me double down on the work that I'm doing. I'm fortunate enough to have a job that A, I love, that B, that helps me pay the bills, and C, that I feel is creating a positive impact in the world. Does not have a political agenda, but there is an agenda, and the agenda is there's something to learn from every conversation.
Yeah.
And so I feel honored for that. So that was double down on the work. And then two was, man, I got a superpower. And my superpower was, I don't like being away from my children
Yeah.
because I don't care how many awards I have or credits or kudos or whatever, trophies.
Yeah.
My son waking up at 3 a.m. to go do pee pee in the bathroom instead of doing pee pee in his diaper or in the bed and figuring out how to do that. At 3 a.m, just me and him, crickets outside, and he like is sleepy and he like walks over and he's doing it and he does it and he looks at me, he's like, thumbs up, like that is better than any award. I'm witnessing another soul growing up, accomplishing something. It's so small, doesn't matter. It's huge. Those moments are just so divine for me. And it's such an honor to witness them that I don't like being away.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not going to be home with my family, then I'm showing up. I'm showing up in a way that because the opportunity cost
Yeah.
is so much larger. And to some extent, I do that here with you now. But definitely if I'm flying somewhere for something for work or something or talk, I really bring it. And I bring a lot of energy because it's like, why, if I'm here instead of being with my children, my family, I'm going to give every ounce. And it just gave me a superpower.
The big cost. Yeah.
What's that?
It's a big cost, so you want to make the absolute best out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for my life trajectory, I had children when I'm 44. So I had a lot of time. It's quite, later, not the early stage. So I had the 20s and 30s to explore and play. And so I'm really appreciating this childhood now, watching and witnessing my children grow up and cherishing the moments because, man, it goes by so fast. It's amazing. And then I think the third thing would be heritage, lineage, having a different understanding of my connection to my father, to my grandfather, to my mother, to my grandparents, like understand and seeing how I'm becoming another link in the chain, I should say, seeing how I'm another link in the chain. Now it's being passed down, and what are you passing down, and what are you not, and what are you yet to work on so that you don't pass it down? And that's been quite a reckoning.
Yeah.
What about for you? Well, how's it been for you so far?
It's been the best year in my life, but also
Mm,
the toughest.
mm.
Because it's like Tony Robbins said, it's like you're throwing in a grenade into like a life. So I have a lot to learn. I have so much love for my son, and I have so much, love for my wife. She's doing an incredible job. I think myself, because I was an athlete all my life, it's always been about goals, goals, go, go, go. So I'm working on adjusting, and it hasn't been, I haven't showed up exactly the way I want to show up. So I'm
Hmm.
really working on that. I'm trying to balancing everything that I want in my life and being present and figuring everything out. So I mean, I would say I'm a mess that's going in the right direction.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way. Thanks for acknowledging that you're not the father that you ideally want to be, and I relate to that too. I fail on that, sometimes more than others,
Yeah,
but I see when you're actually doing the parenting, you see, okay, there's a lot of room for growth here and improvement.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and I realized that I want to be an amazing father, so I have to figure out ways to grow, and that's motivation like nothing
Yeah.
else.
I don't think you have to figure it out. Your son will show it to you. He'll be like, boom, you know, I
Yeah,
suspect.
that's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
Before we go kind of into a little bit deeper into your work, I think one thing that I caught and really wanted to know, you in your conversation with your father, you mentioned your spiritual walk in Norway. Uh, so I don't know what was going on there and what you guys were talking about, but if you wanted to share a little bit more deep on how that, changed, and also it's interesting that, when we go on walks and when we go on journeys, that how things can change. And especially, I think I'm generalizing a lot now, but us men, we have much easier to talk shoulder to shoulder than face to face.
Hmm.
So I was just curious about that.
So did you watch both the conversations or just the one from
I
5, 6 years
think I
ago?
saw both. I've
Okay.
seen them numerous times. So they're mixing up
Aha.
with Little Sleep as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
I
sure.
think this one, I've seen both. The one that I watched, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
last time, was when your father he looked really handsome on that. Like he had this like kind of haircut.
It was like when it was good because the first one 6 years ago was 2 weeks before he had life-saving surgery. So he looked quite, gray, and we weren't sure what would happen. And then the next one, which is about a year and a half ago or 5 years after that one was now that I was a father and he had recovered and he was healthy. And actually, we're going to do another one in January
Oh,
because we're
nice.
recording now in the end of October. So in January, we're going to film,
Yeah.
which will be another update. That'll be 2 years after the last one we did. Um, yeah, I mean, at that story, um, look, when I think a process in life is individuation, and I don't think it happens at a certain age. I think it happens in a certain process, and there's different levels of individuation. There's you as an individual individuating from your family unit. You know, you grow into a family unit. You grow into the culture of that family, the behavior of that family, the expectation of that family, and there's a certain level of individuation that happens, and I think it's also cultural. The individuation, your roots are in Macedonia, which are quite different than Swedish culture, right? Way more individualized there, and in the U.S. as well. I mean, my dad's biggest regret now is that he has what 6 children, and none of them live in the city that he lives in. None of them live even in the same city. So if he wants to go see his children, he has to travel to 6 other cities. I mean, and he's envious of his families back in Macedonia or Serbia where they're there and every weekend they see each other. But there's this thing of individuation that is also somewhat cultural, but that at some point, it's cultural, like relative to the culture, you individuate, you become your own separate unit. And then you team up with another partner, if you will, and build a family unit with kids or without, but you build a family unit. And that too has to individuate from the family unit so that you have space to have your own family.
Yeah.
And so that's happened to me too. There was, one time I was walking in Norway with my father, and we had a very unique experience. We can talk more deeply about that. But that experience was the first time where we conversed, and he saw me as an individual, not as particularly his son. And what I mean by that is an individual who was experiencing life, who was interpreting life differently than he was, who was seeing things differently. And he, for the first time, was seeing my point of view and seeing how it was different and outside of the family unit that I had grown up in. And it was the first moment that he saw me. So that was profound. And it was a very kind of unique experience. And,
Why do you think he saw
I,
you that at that point?
because, we were having the conversation and we were like bumping heads. And then I witnessed something and I said, "Do you see what I see?" And he goes, "Well, I see this." I said, "No, no, this is what I see." And it was just clearly a different thought that he had never thought about before. And it was individuated from the culture and their family that where we're coming from. And in the cocoon of the previous, it was a break in the pattern of our relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And that break was like, oh, wait a second, I'm seeing something new. And that was the thing. And then later on, 20 years later, when I found my partner and we were creating a life, there was another conversation that was like, I'm individuating. Thank you very much. But my wife and I are individuating because we are bringing our own children to this world who are respecting to the family, but it's also individuating. There has to be space.
Yeah.
And then it's not like you're separating, but you're separating to build new bridges.
Yeah.
Both as an individual and as a family member. And I think that that's a natural process. I mean, I look at just before I met my wife, there was a lot of individuation between my mother and I, because the one with my father had happened 20 years earlier, but not quite with my mom. And that happened in its own way, right? In process, so that the space could be created so I could create a new unit with my partner and then find a new way to bridge a new relationship with my mom. And I just think that is a natural part of life, in my opinion. And when you're aware of it, or if you're aware of it, it can make life that much more graceful.
Yeah, I think that's so true. But I also feel like to have these conversations with, when you're individuating with your parents that, was your heroes, and like, how do you find the courage to do it gracefully, and how do you do that part? Because it feels messy, at least in my life.
It's a great question, and I think it is messy. And I think why is it messy? Because we're not really taught how to have conversations.
Yeah.
Where do we have conversations? Well, we model it in our family. Oh, but I'm going to individuate for my family, so I'm going to have these conversations in the way that it's modeled by my family. So is that helpful? I mean, unless you're really fortunate that you have a family that communicates extremely well and with a lot of courage and vulnerability and openness and empathy. I mean, that's rare. I mean, there's a lot of challenges within family. So the other one you get modeled is in your friend group, but that's also challenging because you're not actually, well, it's helpful, but it's how often do you really get to see the intimate conversations between friends or between other people. And that's been something that my team and I've been privileged to witness for the last 10, 11 years, over 1,200 conversations of all these different humans in all kinds of relationships of all ages and gender expressions and backgrounds, have these intimate conversations. And there's a lot to learn from that. And that's what's in the book is here's what we've learned is you got to create the space and ask well-constructed questions. If you do those two things, you can then handle any challenging or messy conversation, and it just helps put it more in order. So with the family, that's why we know that we're making impact, because people watch our conversations, people buy the card games, read the book, and then they apply what they learn. They apply the questions, the card games, or watching the videos and seeing, oh, look at how they converse. That's possible. That's a good question. And they bring that to the relationships in their own life. And we could double click on that, how to do that. But I think, look, it was messy for me, and I think it's still messy to some degree, but after watching so many conversations and understanding the power of questions and how to construct good questions, then I'm like, okay, I know how to create the space. Let me create a safe space, which doesn't have to be comfortable. Let's not confuse safety with comfort. If you're uncomfortable, does not mean you're not safe. Right? And if you're safe, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're safe, if you're comfortable, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're comfortable, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're safe. Right? So let's not confuse it. Let's distinguish the two. If you're in a safe place, and you could be uncomfortable, that's a great place because that means you're growing. And now what you need to do is just put in well-constructed questions to explore and play around. If you could do that, you can have a conversation with any loved one, whether or not you even answer the questions, but you're holding the space to ask the questions. And that's what's imperative.
Yeah, while you were talking, I started thinking about, I feel like we almost have to relearn how to be human, because I got a picture of like some old men in Italy or Macedonia or whatever. They have their coffee at the local coffee shop, they talk, they look the barista in their eye, like there's so many moments of human connection. And then I look at the Western world, and I'm sure many people that are listening here, they have good careers, they have good lives. But when was they drive a nice car, they live in a beautiful home, but when was the last time they actually sat down with someone and had these conversations? So how do we, like, people that are going to listen to this, they're going to be like, I'm craving this. This is like sex. I want this. So how do we get there? Because it's so easy to get caught up in like all the BS, or like, I think you said it, we're rushing towards death,
Yeah, totally. I know I am. I'm trying to slow it down. Distinctions. That's the answer. Distinctions. What do I mean? Okay. Two stories.
Yeah.
First, or one story, one distinction. The story before we go to the distinction. My grandfather, born in Pristina. My father was born in Skopje.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a very colorful guy. I remember being in his house, talking to my friend on the phone. Okay. And he comes up behind me. He loved to do this. He loved to like flick me in the back of the ear really hard. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm talking to my friend." He's like, "You don't use the phone to talk to your friend. You use the phone to arrange a time to meet your friend in the park. And it's in the park where you talk to your friend." He was teaching me about space and time, which was different for him than it was for me because I'm raised in a different time. Nowadays, we don't even have the phone that we used, which was rotary back then. Now you even have a voice note that you don't even listen to the other person at the same time. You leave a voice note, they leave a voice note, you leave a voice note, you send a text, they send a text. You're not even talking in real time. It's right. It's async. So things have shifted, but the core thing is, what space do you create? Right? What space are you creating to have what kind of experiences? So that leads me to, let's make a distinction, which is, I'm saying, what space are you creating? That's a distinction of space. What are we doing in this space? But let's go even deeper in distinction, which is, let's make a distinction between being rich and being wealthy.
Yeah.
Like, and you can make any distinctions you want. With my children, I make a distinction between boundaries and limits. My mom raised me. She says, "Nope, that's off limits. That's off limits." And I decided, no. I'm going to tell my kid not off limits. I don't want him to think there's limits, but I want him to know that there's boundaries. The limits, he can go and reach for the stars, but there are boundaries. You got to respect other people's space. You got to respect what's yours, what's theirs, what other people have needs for. But limits, go for it. So I created that distinction, right?
Yeah.
Which gave me an empowerment. It's a tool when you make these decisions. So one is rich and wealth. Look, you might be rich financially. Let's make that as an example. Let's define rich as financially. But wealthy is what? Maybe, are you healthy? Do you have time? You might be super rich, but have no time. And what's the most valuable thing on the planet? It's time. Because you have time to do things. You have time. Yes, anybody, I was listening to some, you hear this. You hear a podcast where there's who was I talking to? I was talking to someone super successful, and it was on the Eric Worre podcast, and he says, "Man, I'm 60 and I are 68 or something, 65, and I have all this wealth and riches, financial success. But if I can go back 20 years and be in your shoes and have more time, I would do that in a heartbeat."
Yeah.
So, wealth of experience might be, and here's the thing: there's a relationship. There can be a relationship between the two. How much does your pursuit of being rich cost your sense of fulfillment in being wealthy? Maybe you're working your ass off to be financially rich and you never get to spend time with your friends or your family and your children. And it's not a judgment call, what's right, wrong, good, bad. It's just, are you aware of that distinction? And you make a choice. But if you don't make the distinctions, you're not making a choice, and then you're being a zombie and operating. So being really conscientious of the things you name things and the questions you ask yourself is incredibly empowering. So that's what for me is. It's like distinctions, right? Distinctions between questions I ask, distinctions between words and ideas, and then making choices from there.
Love it. And we get so much advice about how often we should train, how much water we should drink, and etc. But I've never seen an advice how often we need real human connection. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
like, what are your thoughts on that, especially working in this for so many years? Because there's people that it's been a decade since they had a real human connection, and I think that's like probably one of the best things to increase happiness, to feel connected to another human being. So what's your thought on that?
Well, number one is why I wrote the book, because how do you cultivate the space between you and other people?
Yeah.
It's not something we're taught.
Yeah.
It's something that we model from our family and friends, but maybe that's not a good modeling. And so, because we've witnessed all these conversations, that's why we put in the book. It's like, hey, here's a guide. Here's how to do it. Here's how to create the space. Here's what a good question is like. Boom, go.
Yeah.
And here's a structure in which you can ask certain questions in a certain um, structure, or uh, like 5-act structure, so that you can have an incredible journey to deepen your relationship. But number one is just like learning how to do it. So that's what the book is for. And then I think it's just finding your own rhythm. Whether it's once a year check in, whether it's every day, or every week. I mean, obviously, the more you practice it, the better you get. So, how good do you want to get at it? And we have people that have the card games either on their coffee table or in their bedroom or in the morning when they have their coffee, and they have a little tradition, a little culture every morning to pull out a random card from the deck. They'll ask their partner and they'll talk about it in the morning or the evening or the middle of the day, glass of wine or whatnot, as the sun goes down or by the fire. And they do that once a week, every Thursday. They do that every morning or every evening or every Sunday, you know? And they have their date night, they have their moment, and they just have that little practice. And just a reminder, what you practice, you get good at. If you're practicing doing this, then don't be surprised that that is not getting better, whatever that is, you know?
And in your experience, someone's ability to connect with others, is that related to the ability to connect with yourself? Because I don't remember where this come from, but I had someone tell me like, look yourself in the mirror for 60 seconds, and when I thought about that, it's very rare. It's very rare that I look at myself 60 seconds right in my eyes and just connecting with it. It rarely happens.
Yeah. Wow. So there's a really interesting question. You asked, is what I understood your question to be was, is your ability to connect with others commensurate or related to your own ability to connect with yourself?
Correct. Yeah.
That's a great question. I got to think about that. I do think there's an incredible amount of power to being present and being present with other people. I mean, why are these podcasts fun? Why do people listen to these podcasts? At least the interview ones, because it's really intimate. You can hear me breathing on the mic, right? It's right in your ear. You're focusing on the intimate voice of two people talking, which we so rarely do these days.
Yeah.
In person is great, but even on the phone, we don't take an hour just to talk. It's like we don't justify our noble behavior, right? Because, or if you do, someone's pulling out their phone. And as soon as they pull out the phone, the energy goes somewhere else and it's dissipated. And it's not an accent that the cliche is like the greatest gift is presence, because you're choosing the finite amount of time you have to spend it here with someone else, then focus it and be present to that moment, because you're never going to have that moment again. And so I don't know about like the connection to yourself. I think there's a relationship, but sometimes we escape into other people and connecting with other people because we don't want to look at ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes we escape into, I'm looking at myself, that we don't pay attention to other people.
Yeah.
I know some people, so I think there's a balance there, and I'm not quite sure what the relationship is, and we can look at it, but at least in terms of grounding, stopping, looking at each other's, one of the most profound things you can do is be present with someone and just look them in the eye for a minute. And we actually do that every time we do the and it's actually in the instructions of playing the game, is take 30 seconds and look at each other in the eye and get grounded in the moment.
Yeah.
Those 30 seconds, when you start, it feels like 30 seconds. But when you get to the 20th second of silence and just being present, the last 10 seconds feels like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And time seems to shift and change. Why? Because you're not distracted. And you're focusing here on the other person. And you're seeing, and this other person, whether you're a friend, your coworker, whatever, your partner, your family member, they are souls that are reflecting your journey as a human being on earth. Whether it's for a month, a day, a year, 10 years, a decade, whatever, they're there. And you're having this moment that will never be repeated again. Every moment is once in a lifetime. Let's not forget. But are you cherishing that moment? And more, and like, yeah, I'll cherish it. But then the question is like, well, how do I do it? Create the space, ask well-constructed questions.
Yeah.
And it will open things up. It will open things up. And if you're listening right now and you're like, you haven't clicked off yet, take home value is focus on the question, not the answer.
Yeah.
Focus on the question, not the answer. All the power is in the question.
Yeah. It's I think that the main challenge that I have and that I'm struggling with is that I love being present like this. I love doing this, but I'm also a person that want to do so much. So I'm distracted in so many ways. So it's very difficult for me to create this space, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you have for that? And I think the one, just look somebody in the eye, put your phone away. I think that's great. But for me, if I know I have 5 things going on after, I'm still like, even now, I'm trying to be like 100% present, but some like things are popping up and I'm just trying to like, go away.
Push them aside. Yeah.
Yeah.
A priority,
Yeah.
prioritizing. And that goes back to the question. If I'm going to prioritize it, off of what criteria am I prioritizing it?
Yeah.
Which is the question. What can I do to most enjoy my life for the next 3 years so that I can inspire the people around me? Okay, if that's the fundamental question, then you write your priority off of that.
Yeah.
If it's like, what can I do for the next 6 months so that I can really provide for my family, support them, and feel challenged, and like I'm making the most of it, then that's your question, and then you prioritize around that. And then you have, being able to focus is a superpower now, and it's even more so because it's so much harder for everyone else to focus, because again, what you practice you get good at. And if you're grabbing your phone every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, because that's what the phone wants you to do, it wants you to be addicted to it, it's going to be hard to focus. If you can focus, you have a superpower. And then you're just thinking, okay, this is where I'm at. And frankly, time shifts. You focus here, you're just gonna hit a home run right here. Okay, as soon as this is done, then I'll change. I'll look at the priority list. I'm gonna tackle the next thing super hard.
Yeah.
And you can only really accomplish that thing on the list of priorities if you're not thinking about the other things on the list.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what the practice of meditation is for me. Meditation is not to have no thoughts.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm sitting in the zone of no thoughts. It's the practice of letting go of other thoughts as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So that it's like raindrops just hitting my shoulders. Bah, 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 bah. It's not distracting me from the thing I'm doing. These thoughts come, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. I'm focusing on this. I'm focusing on this one thought, on this one breath, on this one thing. And the other thoughts that come in. So for me, meditation is a practice of focus, not of having no thoughts. It's a practice of focus by letting go of all the extraneous thoughts.
I love that. I I'm thinking about this conversation on the end with the daughter and the mother, and the father was in prison, and the daughter or were in prison at some point when she was giving birth, and the daughter was asking the question, is how why did dad go to prison? Did he do something really bad? And for some reason, the mom had never told the daughter why. Uh, and because of that, the daughter created so many monsters in her
Mm,
head. And I was thinking about that, and this keeps
mm,
happening in my own life as well. Uh, we're trying to protect the people we love by not sharing all of the information, and the mind, because we're like us species, we go like, if we don't know, we a lot of times go to the worst, right?
mm-hmm.
So what's your advice and take on that, as both a parent but also a friend, a husband, a human being?
Wow, man, that's beautiful, Peter. Dude, I love this. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I'm
thanks.
so glad you watched that one. That's a classic.
Yeah,
Um, if we're talking about the same video, I mean, it's beautiful.
yeah,
I think they did it twice. So you see them in an update, which is great about the project, is that some people have come back year after year, every 2 years, and you see not only like a breadth of all these different kinds of people on it, but also depth over time. So that's awesome. Um, okay, I think it's great question. And I just know that we are storytelling machines
yeah,
to each other and to ourselves.
yeah,
And I do not, you said, how do you do it as humans? How do you do it as friends? How do you do it as family, lovers, and to your children? And I think it's a little different for each
yeah,
because, I like how I'm going to explain something to my son who's 4 is different than how I'm going to explain to him when he's 16. It's different than how I'm going to explain to him when he's 20,
let's take
right?
the example in the video, because that makes
Yeah.
most sense. It's a daughter and mother, so the mother is trying to protect her daughter, but the daughter is creating her father
Yeah.
to be a much bigger problem than he might be. I don't know, but that's what
Yeah.
I'm feeling. So by protecting, the daughter got hurt because she didn't got this question answered. And like, being a father now, I'm starting to think about these things a lot. So I don't like, I was like, wow.
I mean, I don't know. Look, what I think is beautiful about this project is you're watching that and it's bringing up thoughts for you,
Yeah,
and you're gonna execute. You're gonna interact with that, and then you're gonna behave slightly differently because you're informed by something you've seen. And there's a beautiful line that she says to her daughter there. She goes, "You are part me and part your father,
mm,
but you are all of you."
yeah, yeah,
Meaning, you come from us, but you are you and you are all of you. And like,
oh,
holy moly, what a lesson,
yeah,
right? What an incredible lesson. Like, we have these products that are postcards that have the quotes, and we collect the quotes, and just like people say real things. You don't have to be a famous celebrity or a philosopher or an author or a poet to say something beautiful. We humans speak beautiful words about the human experience, and we have a whole collection of them, which are amazing. And that's the one I remember from that conversation.
yeah,
And I think we all have different ways of handling it. I think what's beautiful is that, and what speaks about the project, because we basically have this library of conversations around relationships for the last 11, 12 years.
yeah,
And what's beautiful is that the story of your life or a conversation in the relationship of your life with someone that's important to you can be medicine for me. And the story of my life or a conversation in a relationship that's in my life with my father, for instance, can be medicine for you. And that is humanity. Humanity is us sharing our experiences with each other to connect to something that's not within us. Humanity is not something that's in us, it's what's between us,
yeah,
right? And so when we share a bit of our connection with other people and someone else sees that, it elevates their life because it shows you, hey, here's a little medicine. And it's not like you should do this. It's like, this is what I'm experiencing. Take what you want from it.
yeah,
And we often forget that because a lot of our content is about people talking to you,
yeah,
yelling at you, giving their opinions of the shoulds and what, and it's not vulnerable. It's not necessarily authentic, even though we use that word all the time.
Yeah.
And what I think is beautiful about our work, because we see it as a corner of the internet where it's a digital dose of humanity.
Yeah.
And we do it in our form because if you watch our videos, if you haven't seen them, I mean, you have, but I'm talking to the audience listening, is that we're always showing you both faces at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not like we cut from one person speaking to another person speaking. No, it's two images up on the screen or three where you see them both face at the same time. And so what we're saying visually is that it's not the speaker who's most important. It's not even the listener who's most important. It's both. It's the connection.
Yeah.
And that's how we cultivate humanity. And when we do cultivate humanity, humanity spreads.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I love doing what I do. That's why I'm honored to do it. And I think that's where there's a great deal of value. And I love the fact that you watched that video and brought that up. And I don't have an answer for what I think is the right way, other than okay, then I'm going to end on this, which comes from another couple.
Yeah.
They were on a blind date, and she was amazing. She flew up they're both amazing. We set up a blind date, and she flew in from Miami to New York. She was working in Miami. She flew to New York for the evening, and then she was getting on a bus to go to Princeton because she studied at Princeton.
Yeah.
And she was studying, I think, yeah, okay. So she's on a blind date, and she tells the other person on the blind date, she's like, something about like, what's the greatest lesson you learned, or what is the greatest motto? And she says, be kind, don't be nice. Nice is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And what she meant is, at least I interpreted what she meant was, being nice is, oh, I want to be nice, because I'm, in terms of two adults conversing, I want to be nice because I'm worried about hurting your feelings. And so therefore I won't say the complete truth. And I'm like managing how you're going to feel. And so then I don't, that's not kindness. That's being nice. Nice is bullshit. Be kind. Be kind is be direct, be honest, be vulnerable, be courageous. Tell it how you see it and be open to receive the feedback.
Yeah.
Be kind. And that's another thing to make a distinction about. Are you being nice or are you being kind? Be kind. Being kind is like, I acknowledge you're an adult. You can manage your emotions. You can deal with it. I'm not going to pander you and treat you like a 3-year-old. I'm going to let you know how I feel, how it is. I'm also going to be open to the feedback.
Yeah.
Right? That's another distinction that I got from watching these videos. Don't be nice. Be kind.
And I think, I love that. And I think that's why, like, now when I think about it and hearing you, that's kind of the whole point, to find your own answers by asking the right questions, right? And we are looking for so much guidance in our life, and like there's so many people screaming to us what to do, but asking the right questions and sit with them, it creates something interesting. I'm curious, how do I get my dad to do this? Because my dad is an old school dad, just like yours.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be very meaningful for me to sit down and do this with him. But I don't know how I would get him.
Great question. Great question, because it's so useful. The questions can lead to a lot of utility. So one is, I just want to make one distinction, because you said asking the right question. And I say, let's make a distinction. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just what's more constructive or less constructive.
Yeah.
So, because there's never like the right question. No. That's like judgment call. Is like, no. Just, is this can I construct this question better or not?
Yeah.
Right. So that's in the book and stuff. So, okay, your dad. Let's talk about your dad. Here's what first. Okay, number one. If you're going to go and approach him for this, you have to approach him without an agenda. An agenda, I mean, is that you can't approach it with a way about how you want it to end up.
Yeah.
You have to approach it with an intention. Hey, Pops, I saw this cool shit on YouTube. Two people talking, kind of similar to us. Dad's from Macedonia, and it resonated. And you want to watch it? Check it out. See what happens. Or you say, and they had the cool conversation, and it's based on these card games in this box. Let's play. And the box is a great game because it's a game. Let's play. It's a game.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, because here's the thing. If your dad came home and was like, hey, Peter, why do you love me? Out of the blue.
Yeah.
You would not be wondering why you love your father. You'd be wondering, what the hell happened that my dad, who never talks about this stuff, has just come home and he's asking me this deep question. So
Yeah.
you're actually not thinking about the answer to the question, why do you love me? You're thinking, why the hell is he asking me this question?
Yeah.
But the space hasn't been created for you guys to have that conversation. Similarly, if he comes home one day and he goes, Peter, son, you make me so proud. I love you so much. I'm so proud seeing you're a father. You're a better father than I ever was and I ever dreamed of you being. I can't believe these are great words of compliments, but you're not receiving them because you're wondering what the hell happened to him that he's coming out of the blue giving me this, all this love and affection. Did he almost just get hit by a car? Did he just have a heart attack? What happened? The space hasn't been created for you to receive. Now, we just need an artifice. We just need a thing that creates a space that removes those questions of why are we asking this question or why is he telling me this? Introduce the box of games. Hey, Pops, I got a game called The And. I saw this cool video. They ask crazy questions. Here, let's play. Let's just play a game. 15 minutes. Choose a question. You're going to choose a question. I'm going to answer it. Then I choose a question and you'll answer it. Okay. And by the way, here's what's key. Part of being a safe space, albeit uncomfortable, is that he does not need to answer the question if he doesn't want. Yeah. Right? Because this means it's like he does not need to, he could take a pass.
Yeah.
He can earn the right to take a pass by just looking in the eye for 10 seconds or taking a pause, breathing together if looking in the eye is too intimate, and just saying pass. Done. Yeah. You're not forcing someone to do something. That comes about having an agenda. We have to have this talk. No. The intention is let's explore our relationship. That's freedom. That's space. Their back is not against the wall. And then you pull the card out. Why do you love me? Okay. He pulls out a random card. Why do you love me? You're not wondering why he asked you the question, why do you love me? You know, because you're playing the game. Right? And then you could tell him why you love him. Or you ask him, why do you love me? And he tells you all the reasons he loves you. And now the space has been created for you to receive. And so sometimes we just need to create the space. And that's what these games, these card games, it's so simple, does. And they're really well constructed because my team and I spent a lot of time constructing really good, unique questions. And that's what's useful. So for your dad, long rant is I would go to him and depending on what you think would work best, be like, Pops, I have a cool game. I just did a podcast with this guy. His dad's from Macedonia. He even speaks Swedish. We riffed on that. Let's just play. Let's just take 15 minutes. Put the phones away. That's important. No, look at it. Let's put the phones 15, 20 minutes away. Here's how it works. I'm going to put out a question. I'm going to ask you. You don't have to answer if you don't want. You can say pass. Then you'll take a question, ask, and we'll just go back and forth a few times and just see what happens. Or, hey, Dad, check out this cool video. There's a Macedonian dad talking about culture and raising his son. Let him watch it. If you would sit down and watch it, say, hey, is it cool? Oh, look at this follow-up 5 years later. Oh, isn't it cool? Well, you know what? I have fucking this product of questions. Do you want to play? I mean, that's basically our business model now is that we take the proceeds of selling the card games to make these productions, which amplifies the humanity of sharing each other's stories. People see them and go, oh, I want those. I want to have those conversations in my life. Great. Buy the card game. Yeah. So it's just a beautiful loop, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for your time. Had a great conversation with you. Here's the book that all of you can check out. I will have a link to that and also to your web shop if you want to do the game. I just want to say, thank you for holding this space with me. And it was very enjoyable. I'm grateful that we could do this. So thanks so much.
Peter, it's such a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And thanks to everybody that is here. I told you about my mission. I told you about my goal. If you enjoyed this conversation, for sure, check out, the Skin Deep and the YouTube channel. Check out the book. Give me a review. Send this to somebody that needs to hear this conversation because this is about the human experience. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you guys soon.